The cold wind bit harder as Mira Carter walked the narrow streets of Brookhaven. The town was wrapped in the kind of silence that came only when the world had resigned itself to mediocrity. She hated it, the dullness, the predictability. Every day felt the same. Work at the diner, ignore the bickering at home, and retreat to her room where she'd drown herself in fantasy novels, dreaming of a life that wasn't hers. Her bus was late as usual. She leaned against the shelter pole, clutching her dog-eared paperback. The story of a brave heroine wielding ancient magic filled her mind, but it felt so far from her own mundane life. And then a flicker. Across the street, something caught her eye, the abandoned thrift store on Elm Street. It had been shut for years, but now the front door was slightly open, and a strange light glowed faintly from within. Curiosity tugged at her. No one ever went in there. Mira hesitated for a moment, then stepped off the curb, drawn toward the strange light like a moth to a flame. Inside, the air was stale and thick with dust. The glow came from a small display case at the back of the room. Mira's breath caught as she approached. A pendant, glimmering like trapped sunlight, sat alone on a velvet pillow. The room seemed to hum faintly. When she reached out to touch it, a sharp voice broke the silence. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," said an old man, emerging from the shadows. His eyes were sharp, his beard long and white. "That thing doesn't belong to you." Mira froze. I didn't mean to." The man stepped closer. "Few people see it. Fewer still are drawn to it. If you've come this far, then perhaps it does belong to you." Before she could respond, the pendant flared with light. Mira cried out as a searing warmth spread up her arm. The old man's voice rose urgently. "Take it. It's chosen you. But beware, your life will never be the same." The world exploded into chaos. Mira felt herself pulled into a vortex of light and sound. She screamed, clutching the pendant, but the sensation was overwhelming, like being ripped apart and rebuilt all at once. When the storm subsided, she was lying on soft, mossy ground. Mira sat up slowly, blinking against the sudden brightness. The air was warm and fragrant, filled with unfamiliar scents. Around her stretched a vast forest, its trees glowing faintly as if alive. "Where am I?" she whispered. The pendant hung from her neck, warm against her skin. It pulsed gently as if alive. Before she could gather her thoughts, a rustling noise caught her attention. From the bushes emerged a small, golden fox-like creature. Its fur shimmered in the light, and its eyes glowed with an unnatural intelligence. "You're late," it said, its voice sharp but melodic. Mira scrambled back. Did you talk?" "Yes, and you need to keep moving. It's not safe here." The fox's ears twitched nervously. "You've activated the pendant. Now they will come." "Activated?" Mira repeated, her mind spinning. "I don't even know where I am." The fox sighed. "There's no time to explain everything now. Follow me or you'll die." Before Mira could respond, the ground began to shake. A low, guttural roar echoed through the forest. The fox's fur bristled. "Run!" it shouted, darting into the trees. Mira stumbled after it, her heart pounding. Behind her, the trees split apart as a massive shadow surged forward. A creature of darkness and roots, its glowing red eyes locked onto her. The chase was a blur. The fox led her through twisting paths, over streams, and through fields of luminous flowers. The creature followed relentlessly, its claws tearing through the landscape. Finally, they reached a clearing. At the center stood a stone monolith etched with glowing runes. "Touch it!" the fox yelled. "What?" Mira gasped, barely able to catch her breath. "The monolith. Touch it, or we're both dead." Desperate, Mira slapped her hand against the cold stone. The runes flared to life, and a barrier of light erupted around them, forcing the creature back. It roared in frustration before retreating into the shadows. Mira collapsed to the ground, trembling. "What the hell was that?" "A void beast," the fox said grimly. "A servant of the Voidbringer. And now that you've awakened the pendant, it won't stop until it has you." As the fox explained, Mira learned the truth about where she was. The world was called Elaria, a realm of magic and beauty, now crumbling under the shadow of the Voidbringer, a dark force that consumed everything in its path. The pendant she wore was the last relic of the Guardians, a group of powerful mages who once protected Elaria. "But I'm not a guardian," Mira protested. "I don't even know how to use magic." "You'll learn," the fox said. "You have to. Elaria depends on you now." Mira wanted to argue, to demand answers, but a new sound interrupted them, a chorus of howls growing louder. "They've found us again," the fox said, its voice tight with fear. "We need to move." The fox led Mira deeper into the forest, toward a hidden sanctuary where she could train. But as they reached a ridge overlooking a vast, shimmering lake, a new figure emerged. A tall man cloaked in black, his eyes glowing with a sinister red light. The fox froze. "The Shadow Herald," it whispered. "One of the Voidbringer's generals." Mira's heart pounded as the man raised his hand, the air around him distorting with dark energy. "You should not have come here, little guardian," he said, his voice cold and echoing. "The Voidbringer has claimed this world. And now it claims you." Before Mira could react, the ground beneath her feet crumbled. She screamed as she fell into the abyss, the fox's desperate cry echoing in her ears. The cold wind whipped around Mira as she plummeted into the darkness. The pendant at her neck burned against her skin, and the light from it flared brighter with each passing second. For a brief moment the roar of the wind deafened her, and then, suddenly, everything slowed. A golden barrier of light surrounded her, catching her just before she smashed into the rocky ground below. She landed gently on a soft bed of moss, gasping for air. The pendant's light dimmed, and she realized the ground wasn't natural. It was too smooth, too perfectly placed, as if carved by something ancient. The fox landed beside her with a grace that didn't match its panic from moments earlier. Its golden fur was ruffled, and its sharp eyes scanned the cavern. "You're lucky that thing activated in time. If it hadn't, you'd be a stain on these rocks." Mira struggled to her feet, her knees shaking. "Where are we? What just happened?" The fox didn't answer immediately. It turned its gaze toward the center of the cavern. A massive stone archway loomed there, its edges covered in glowing runes. Strange symbols etched into its surface pulsed faintly, as though alive. "This is a gateway," the fox said finally. "One of the few remaining connections to the heart of Elaria. It hasn't been used in centuries." Mira's head throbbed. "Why does it feel strange?" "Because it's unstable. If we don't stabilize it before activating it, it could kill us both. But the Void Beast won't wait for us to figure it out. Either we try, or we stay here and hope it doesn't find another way down." Mira stared at the archway, unease curling in her stomach. "You're saying this thing could save us, or kill us?" The fox nodded. "Pretty much." The ground trembled, and a low growl echoed from the opening above them. Mira clenched her fists, fear tightening her chest. "Fine. What do I do?" The fox guided her to the base of the archway. "Put your hands here," it instructed, pointing to 2 indentations in the stone. She obeyed, and the moment her palms made contact, the runes flared to life. A surge of energy rushed through her, and the air rippled. "Focus," the fox barked. "The pendant will do the rest." Mira closed her eyes, trying to concentrate. She felt the pendant's energy connect with the gateway, felt it draw power from deep within her. The air hummed louder, and the runes began to spin, creating a vortex of golden light. "Step through," the fox urged. Mira hesitated. The light was blinding, and the humming grew deafening. "What if?" The fox cut her off. "Just go." Taking a deep breath, Mira stepped into the vortex. For a moment, her body felt weightless, as if she were dissolving into the light. Colors swirled around her, and then, with a jolt, she landed on solid ground. Mira opened her eyes and found herself standing in a vast, open plain. The sky above was streaked with purples and oranges, a perpetual twilight that bathed the land in a warm glow. The air smelled of wildflowers, and a gentle breeze rustled the grass. The fox appeared beside her, shaking itself off. "We made it." Mira barely had time to process the strange beauty of the place before a deep, resonant voice called out, "Who dares trespass on sacred ground?" Mira spun around. A towering figure clad in golden armor approached, a glowing sword in hand. His face was obscured by a helm, but his voice carried authority. Mira stammered. The fox stepped in front of her. "We mean no harm. She's the new guardian." The armored figure froze, then removed his helm, revealing sharp, chiseled features and piercing green eyes. His gaze locked onto Mira, scrutinizing her. "You're the one chosen by the pendant?" he asked, his tone skeptical. Mira nodded slowly, still gripping the pendant. "Apparently." He shook his head, disbelief written across his face. "Impossible. You're untrained. You'll die before you can even face the Voidbringer." Mira's frustration bubbled over. "You think I don't know that? I didn't ask for any of this." The man studied her for a long moment, then sighed. "I am Kael, last sentinel of Elaria. If the pendant has chosen you, I have no choice but to aid you. But know this, You are woefully unprepared for what lies ahead. The fox stepped forward. She doesn't need your doubts, Kael. She needs training, and fast. Kael's expression hardened. Then we must go to the sanctum. If there's any hope of her learning to wield her power, it lies there. But we must move quickly. The void will already be hunting her. Mira felt a shiver run down her spine. What is this sanctum? Kael's gaze turned toward the horizon. The last stronghold of the Guardians. If it still stands, it's your only chance of survival. The fox nudged Mira. Let's go. We're running out of time. As they began their journey, Mira couldn't shake the feeling that she was stepping into a world far beyond her understanding. The weight of the pendant around her neck felt heavier than ever. Ahead, the sanctum awaited, but so did the shadows.